The first time the deep knocked, it did it through my fillings. I wasn't wearing headphones. I wasn't even looking at a screen. I was leaning over a metal desk with a plastic cup of coffee and a screwdriver between my teeth because I needed both hands. And then thump, thump, thump. My whole jaw lit up like somebody hit a tuning fork against bone. The coffee trembled. The little ring of foam around the rim quivered into perfect circles. I pulled the screwdriver out and tasted metal and old salt and something like pennies. And I laughed because it was either laugh or start screaming in the middle of a briefing room full of people who didn't blink. "Your hydrophones are fucked," I said to the shift chief. That was my job, contract comms. Fix the deep ocean array when it stopped behaving. You don't fly a guy out by military hello and drag him onto an offshore platform at 2 in the morning for a normal glitch. Normal glitches don't come with men in sidearms, standing in the corners like furniture. The chief didn't like my mouth. She had that clean badge look like she'd never had to wipe fish guts off a bulkhead in her life. Hair tight, hands behind her back, eyes calm in a way that felt practiced. "Language," she said. "Your ocean doesn't care," I said, and the thump climbed my spine again, slow and heavy, like someone pressing on the hull with a giant thumb. Nobody laughed with me. Nobody even pretended. The platform itself was a monster. Not the cinematic kind, the practical kind. Steel legs disappearing into black water, flare stack breathing orange, helipads slick with mist. Everything stank like diesel, brine, and hot paint. The wind had teeth. Somewhere below the deck plates, pumps groaned and valves chattered, and the sea slapped the legs with that wet, bored violence it has when it knows you can't do shit about it. A petty officer, Navy, I could tell by the posture and the way he looked through you, walked me through security. Took my phone, took my watch, took my little Lucky Charm I keep on my keyring, a rusted bolt from my first job on a trawler. Like it was contraband. Sentimental, I said. Policy, he said, and dropped it into a bin with my wallet. No ton, no curiosity. Like he'd already cataloged every human habit and filed it under irrelevant. The chief watched it all like she was watching a weather report. "You're here to stabilize comms at the site," she said. "Not fix, not repair, stabilize." Like the problem was a living thing you could calm down if you stroked it the right way. "Sure," I said. "Where's the rack? Where's the array head? Who fucked with my gain staging?" Her jaw ticked. "You'll get what you need. You'll do what you're told. I'm not your sailor. You're on my platform," she said. "That makes you mine for as long as I say." That should have been the moment I told her to shove the contract up her ass and take a helicopter back to shore. But I'd already felt the thump in my teeth, and it had felt personal, like the ocean had noticed me. They moved fast after that, like if they slowed down, I'd have time to ask the wrong questions. A man in a gray coverall with no-name patch checked the seals on my duffel and ran a wand over my boots like I might be smuggling a bomb in my socks. Then they took me to the elevator tube, not the kind you see on tourist rigs. This was a pressure-rated capsule on rails bolted into the platform spine, a vertical coffin with a steel grate floor and a hatch that closed with a hydraulic sigh. The inside smelled like antiseptic fighting mold and losing. "You're going down," the chief said, like she was telling me I was going to the grocery store. "Down where?" I said. She didn't answer. Just watched me step inside. The hatch closed. There was a hiss as the inner seal engaged. The lights flickered once like the tube had blinked. My ears popped even before we moved. The capsule dropped. Not free fall, controlled, but enough that my stomach tried to climb into my throat. The rails hummed. The steel around me creaked as pressure changed in stages. Each lock we passed, a set of indicator lights blinked red to green with a delay that made my skin crawl, like the system was listening to something else before it decided to let me through. I stared at the emergency instructions bolted to the wall. They were printed in 2 languages, English and something that looked like math. On level 3, the capsule stopped so hard my knees flexed. The hatch opened to a narrow compartment with a table bolted down and a tablet sitting on it. An officer in khaki, Navy again, but higher up, gestured at the tablet. "Sign," he said. I scrolled. Non disclosure. Non disclosure. Non disclosure. Pages of it. Clauses about audio phenomena and neurological events and contamination vectors. There was a line that made my throat tighten. Subject agrees to comply with all medical directives regarding hydration and salinity cravings. Is this a joke? I asked. The officer didn't smile. He rested his hand on the pistol on the table. Not pointed at me, just there like an idea. The thump did its slow thing through the walls, like the station was a drum. I signed. On level 7, the air changed. It got thinner somehow, even though I knew it was pressurized. It tasted like pennies and whetstone. There was condensation on the walls, beads of water forming and sliding down like the place was sweating. On level 9, I started noticing the sound. You think sound comes from a direction. That's true on land, mostly. Underwater, or under a lot of water, sound doesn't behave. It doesn't come from over there. It comes from everywhere. It comes through the pipes, through the bolts, through your teeth. It crawls. The capsule dropped again. On level 12, the lights went out for half a second. Just long enough for my brain to picture the tube stopping, stranded in black, with water pressure pressing on the hull like a hand on a throat. The lights came back. The capsule kept going. I realized I'd been holding my breath like that mattered. On level 14, the hatch opened on a corridor that made my skin pucker. Thick windows lined one side with emergency shutters. Some shutters were down, and the ones that weren't showed black water pressed against reinforced glass like a fist. Outside lights, mounted to the station, cast weak cones that didn't fade into distance. They just died, like the darkness was chewing them off. The other side of the corridor was all pipes and cable trays and bulkheads. Everything painted the same institutional gray, but the paint had bubbled in spots like it was trying to peel itself off. Water dripped somewhere with a steady, lazy rhythm that didn't match any leak I could see. A medic met me at the threshold. She didn't say hello. She jammed a thermometer into my ear. Any ringing? She asked. My whole jaw is ringing, I said. Do you do that to everyone, or am I special? Her eyes flicked to the security camera in the corner, then back to me. Chest tightness. I'm in a tin can under the ocean, I said. Yeah, a little. Cravings, she said. I blinked. Cravings for what? A cigarette? A way out. Salt, she said flat. Dark. Cold. If you start wanting to drink brine, you report. Isterteher. That's a thing that happens. She looked at me like I'd asked if drowning was wet. She held up a tablet and checked boxes. Any auditory hallucinations? Define hallucinations. Voices, she said. If you hear a familiar voice where there shouldn't be one, you report immediately. My mouth went dry. Not from thirst. From that old, deep instinct that says don't say the wrong thing around the wrong people. Sure, I lied. She handed me a laminated badge with a clip. It had my name and a spiral logo stamped into it like a nautilus shell, except the curve didn't close. It kept going like it was trying to unwind into a straight line. Don't remove it, she said. Don't give it to anyone. Don't let anyone take it. People steal badges down here. I asked. She didn't answer. Just stepped aside so security could scan me again, like they didn't trust the last scan to still be true. They took my tools. I argued because of course I did. These are mine, I said, gripping the handle of my favorite screwdriver like it was a weapon. I know how they feel. I know the weight. You want me to do a delicate splice with some cheap ass. A technician in a gray coverall held up a crate. Inside were tools that looked normal at first glance until I noticed the stamp on the handles. That same spiral. That same curve that refused to close. They're not cheap, the technician said, offended, like I'd insulted his mother. They're not mine, I shot back. The shift chief stepped in. You'll use station-issued equipment. End of discussion. What? I said, and immediately felt stupid for asking. What's wrong with my tools? Are you worried I'll, what? Scratch your secret door. Her eyes sharpened. We're worried you'll introduce variables. Variables? I echoed. You people talk like you're tuning a fucking piano. Do you want to be here? she asked, quiet. No. Then do your job, she said, and walked away. They escorted me down the corridor to the comms room. It looked like every comms room I'd ever worked in until you stared too long. Racks of gear, monitors, spools of fiber, a panel set into the wall with a speaker grill. Someone had taped foam over the grill like they were trying to smother her mouth. I peeled it off because that's what you do when you're paid to fix a problem. Underneath, the metal grill had dents in it, not for being hit from the outside, from something pushing from inside. A chair sat in front of the consoles. The cushion was worn. There was a dark stain on the armrest that looked like dried salt. Your station tech briefed you? I asked the gray coverall guy who'd follow me in. He shrugged. You'll see. That annoyed me more than it should have. People who live on platforms have a language of their own. Everything is shorthand. Everything is you'll see. Because if you say it out loud, it becomes real. I slid into the chair. The air conditioner rattled like it was struggling. My skin felt damp under my shirt, like the place couldn't decide if it wanted to be cold or wet. I powered up the feed. I expected the usual white noise, whale song, sonar chatter, distant shipping engines humming through the abyss. The deep has a sound. If you spend time on ships, you can hear it even when you're not listening for it. It's like a constant throat clearing. Instead, I got a clean channel with a pulse on it. Thump, thump, thump. It showed up on the waveform like breath, like a chest rising and falling, heavy enough that my teeth tingled again. I checked the timestamps. Live. No loop. No drift. No aliasing. It was too neat, like I want to be counted. I traced the signal path through the system. The array was fine. The amplifiers were fine. The cable runs were within spec. The pulse wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from the station. From lower. I pressed my headset tighter, like that would make it less intimate. Okay, I muttered. Okay, you assholes. I hit the comm button. Chief, I said. Static. Then her voice, calm as ever. Report. The array isn't your source, I said. The pulse is originating inside the structure. It's below my deck. There was a pause. Not confusion. Calculation. You're hearing mechanical resonance, she said. No, isnapat. I've been on rigs and storms where the whole platform sings. This is a waveform. It's consistent. It's timed. Something is knocking. Another pause. Her voice came back colder. Stay in your lane. I barked a laugh. My lane is sound. Something in your basement is beating like a heart. It's not a heart, she said. And for the first time, her control slipped just enough for something sharp to peek through. Fear. Anger. Both. Then she added, do your job, and cut the line. The thump kept going even when I muted the feed. That's not poetic. That's literal. I felt it through the chair, through the floor, through my molars. The station itself was a speaker. The ocean was the amplifier. I forced myself to focus. Because fear is easier to manage when you can turn it into a checklist. I opened the rest of the channels. Channel 4. Faint metallic banging, like someone tapping a wrench against a pipe. At first it sounded random, then I realized it wasn't. It was a pattern that almost formed a rhythm, then broke like whoever was doing it kept forgetting the beat. Channel 9. A tone that rose and fell in steps, like a siren learning to talk. Channel 12. Breathing. Not bubbles. Not regulator hiss. Slow, wet inhalations with pauses too long for a human. Like a lung that didn't need oxygen on the same schedule we did. I leaned closer to the speaker grill, and the breathing leaned back. I unplugged the panel. The breathing continued in my headset. I stared at the dangling cable in my hand, ridiculous in its simplicity. Nope, I said out loud because sometimes saying it helps. No, fuck you. The gray coverall technician was still standing in the doorway, watching like I was a show. His face was pale in the monitor glow. You hear that? I demanded. He swallowed. Just do what you can. What the hell is this place? I said, and the words came out sharper than I meant. You're running a comms room with foam taped over the speaker like it's gonna bite you. Your medic is asking me if I crave brine like it's a sobriety test. And now I've got somebody breathing in my ear with a headset unplugged. He looked at the camera in the corner again. "Lower your voice." "I'm not yelling," I said. "This is my normal voice." "Not down here," he said. The thump hit again, and the overhead light flickered in time with it. A tiny synchronization, like the system was listening. I opened the station logs. The file structure was neat in the way bureaucrats like. Dates, times, incident codes, everything categorized like sins in a church ledger. But half the files were corrupted. Some had entire minutes missing, as if the camera blinked and didn't want to admit it. There were incident titles that made my stomach tighten. Level 15 audio event. External ops return / quarantine. Salinity compliance failure. ROV loss / signal interface attempt. Interface attempt. I clicked one. The video buffered, stuttered, then played. An ROV camera outside a viewport. Lights slicing through black. Sea floor in the distance, except it didn't look like sea floor. The sand looked combed, not natural ripples. Lines. A grid. The ROV drifted closer, and the grid resolved into something impossible. Straight corridors. Right angles. Smooth surfaces that weren't rock and weren't coral. It looked like a city plan pressed into the abyss, like something built in the dark with the confidence that nobody would ever see it. Then the grid moved. Not the camera, the ground. The whole pattern rose like a sheet being pulled up. Towers flared into the light, pale and ribbed, like pipes grown into architecture, like bones turned into buildings. The feed glitched hard like someone punched it. The last frame froze on something pressed against the ROV dome. Pale, jointed, too close to see whole. A hand? A phone? A limb with too many hinges? Then the file cut to black. My jaw ached. I realized I'd been clenching my teeth so hard it hurt. I tried to rewind. The file refused. It kicked back to a blank screen, and the heartbeat sound climbed in volume until the waveform clipped into square blocks. My fillings sang. Literally, a thin, high whine that made my eyes water. I slammed the mute button and sat back, breathing hard. My coveralls felt damp. My socks felt damp. Everything felt damp. Like the station wanted you to remember you were underwater even when you weren't touching it. I should have called the chief. I should have demanded answers. I should have gone back up and gotten on a helicopter and disappeared. Instead, I sat there and listened to the silence between the thumps. Because the thing about deep water work is you get used to ignoring your instincts. Your instincts tell you not to go into cold black depths. Your paycheck tells you to step off the deck anyway. I'd learned long ago that if you flinch at every weird noise, you never finish a job. You never get paid. You never eat. So I kept digging. I pulled maintenance schematics. Most were locked. The ones that weren't showed the station down to level 14 and then blank. Like the map ended because somebody didn't feel like drawing the rest. There was a sealed deck that didn't show on the layout. I noticed it in the elevator tube. Indicator lights blinked for it, but there was no stop. Like the capsule had passed a floor and nobody wanted to admit it existed. I asked the tech again, quieter. "How far down does this place go?" His mouth twitched like he wanted to tell me and couldn't. "Far enough," he said. "Far enough for what?" He looked at the floor. "For it. What's it?" I said, and immediately the headset crackled. Not the channels, not the feed, just a single pop, like something had touched the line. Then I heard my brother say my name. "Hey," he said. "Hey, man, you there?" I stood so fast my chair went over backward. It clanged against the console. The gray coverall tech flinched like he expected a gunshot. I ripped the headset off and threw it on the desk like it was a snake. My brother's voice kept going, softer now, like it had stepped away from the mic. "You don't have to be down there," he said. Come up now." My brother had been dead for 8 years. Car fire, highway, a drunk driver, closed casket. My mom cried into my shirt at the funeral and kept saying she couldn't smell him anymore, like that was the final proof he was gone. I hadn't heard his voice since the last voicemail he left me, the one I'd saved for years until my phone died and took it with it. I stared at the headset on the desk like it might move on its own. The gray coverall tech whispered, "You heard it." It wasn't a question. I opened my mouth and nothing came out, because saying yes felt like signing another NDA, but this one would be with whatever lived below us. The voice came again, through the speaker grill this time, through the foam residue, through dents and metal. "Come up," my brother said, and there was something wrong with the way he said it. Too clean, too clipped, like the idea of urgency without the breath behind it. I backed out of the comms room. The corridor felt narrower than before. The windows on the ocean side were darker, like the outside lights had dimmed, or like something outside had moved closer and blocked them. Halfway down the hall, I nearly collided with a diver. He wore the upper section of a hard suit, torso ring-locked, chest plate strapped, while his legs were still in station clothes and rubber boots. His face was marked with red pressure lines, as if someone had pressed him against a grate. He grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "You hurt it too," he said. His breath smelled like salt and old coffee and something sour. "Let go." I snapped, reflexive. He didn't. His eyes were bloodshot, not from lack of sleep, but from something else. Something that had pushed behind them. "They said it was stress," he hissed. "They said it was decompression." "Bullshit." "Who said?" I asked, and the words came out hoarse. He jerked his thumb down the hall toward the sealed deck. "The people who don't come out. The people with clean badges. External ops?" I said, reading the patch on his sleeve. ROV/external. He laughed without humor. "Yeah, Mercer. That's me. Or it was." He yanked his glove cuff back and showed me his hand. Under his fingernail, something dark sat like a sliver. Not wood, not metal. Something that looked like a thread of ink alive. "Got on the last run," he said. "We brought back samples. Metal flakes. Biofilm. Stuff that looked like rust until it moved." He dug at the sliver with his teeth like he couldn't stand feeling it there. Then he spat. A string of black slime hit the drain grate, and it wriggled once like it wanted to crawl back up. Mercer's eyes went wide, like he hadn't expected it to move that much. "See?" he said, voice breaking. "See? That's what I'm talking about." He slapped his hand against the wall like he could crush whatever was inside him. The slap echoed down the corridor, and somewhere below, the thump answered like it was listening. Mercer laughed, then gagged. His whole body folded, and he retched a mouthful of thin, salty water onto the floor. Not vomit. Water. Clear as if he'd swallowed the ocean. The station lights flickered. A little chirp sounded from a speaker in the ceiling. Not an alarm. More like a notification. Two security guys appeared like they'd been waiting behind the bulkhead. "External Ops Tech Mercer," one of them said. "COMMS is reading a grocery list." "You're off protocol." Mercer tried to shove past them. The guards grabbed him. He fought like an animal. He kicked, he bit, he screamed. And he screamed my brother's name. That was the moment my brain snapped from confusion into pure, stupid action. I grabbed the nearest thing, a tool case someone had left open on a cart, and swung it at the guard's wrist. The baton clanged away. The guard cursed and turned on me with a face full of surprise, like I'd broken a rule he forgot existed. "Contractor," he barked. "Stand down." "Fuck you," I shouted and drove my shoulder into him. The second guard shoved me back. My spine hit the wall. Pain flared. The corridor smelled like salt water and sweat. Mercer's mouth was open in a silent scream now, because the other guard had jammed a hand over it. His eyes locked on mine. "Help me," they said without words. Or maybe, "Don't let them take me down." I didn't know which. I shoved again, desperate and stupid. The guard hit me in the ribs with an elbow. I tasted copper. Then a third figure stepped into the corridor. Shift chief, clean badge gleaming even under the 6-station light. "Enough," she said, and her voice cut through the chaos like a knife. The guards froze. Mercer didn't. He bucked hard, and something under the skin of his throat bulged like a fish trying to push out. The chief's eyes flicked to it, and for the first time, I saw the crack in her calm. "Fear. Take him to medical," she ordered. Mercer's boots scraped on the floor as they dragged him. He left wet streaks like a snail trail. I lunged to follow, and the chief stepped in my path. Her gaze pinned me. "You are out of your lane," she said, very quietly. "My lane," I panted. "He's throwing up ocean water, and you're talking about lanes?" "He's contaminated," she said. "Contaminated by what?" She leaned in just enough that I could smell her. Clean soap, antiseptic, something chemical that didn't belong this deep. "By attention," she said. "By contact. By—" A thump hit the station hard enough that the window shutters rattled. She didn't flinch, but her pupils tightened. "Go back to your room," she said. "Finish your task. And keep your mouth shut." "Or what?" I spat. She didn't answer that. She didn't have to. The guards' hands hovered near their batons like hungry dogs. Mercer's scream turned muffled behind a closing door. The corridor went quiet again, except for the drip, drip, drip of water that wasn't supposed to be there. I stood there shaking, ribs aching, trying to decide if I was brave enough to be smart. Then my brother's voice came again, not through a speaker this time, but through the wall beside my ear, like he was standing on the other side of the bulkhead. "Wrong way," he whispered. I backed away from the wall like it had burned me. The chief watched me do it. Her mouth tightened. "You're hearing things," she said. And the way she said it made it clear she didn't mean it as comfort. She meant it as a warning. Because hearing things meant you were on the list. The medic's checklist. "Yeah," I said, voice rough. "So are you." Her face didn't move. "Go." I didn't go back to the comms room. Not right away. I walked like I was obeying. Like I was doing what they wanted. I passed the windows where the ocean pressed close, black and patient. I passed the emergency shutters with dents like they'd been hit from the outside. I kept my head down like a good little contractor. Then, when the corridor camera rotated to track a passing tech cart, I slipped behind a dehumidifier rack and found the maintenance hatch. Someone had tried to paint over the warning stripe. The paint chipped. The yellow still showed like a bruise under skin. My hand shook as I pried it open. The crawl space behind it exhaled cold air that smelled like mold and wet pennies. There was a faint vibration through the metal, a slow rhythm that matched the thump. The heartbeat. The knock. I crawled inside on my elbows, trying not to think about the ocean pressing on the station like a god's palm. Try not to think about how many locks and seals were between me and instant death. Water dripped somewhere ahead, slow and steady, like a leak that had been allowed to exist for a long time. My badge scraped on the metal and made a tiny sound that felt loud enough to wake whatever lived below. I paused, listening. A faint ping echoed through the crawl space. Not the station's alarms. Not a sonar sweep from outside. A single clean tone, like a question. Then my brother's voice again, closer now, right beside my ear. "Don't," he said, soft as breath. "Don't go down." I bit my tongue hard enough to hurt. You don't answer voices. You don't bargain with whatever is wearing them. You keep moving. I crawled. The space narrowed, then opened into a drop shaft with a ladder bolted down the side. No signage, no lights, just a red glow far below, pulsing like a warning heart. The air down there stank like iodine and rotting fish left in the sun. I started down. Halfway, my arms burned. The ladder rungs were cold enough to sting. Condensation slicked the metal. Every few rungs, there were tiny barnacle-like bumps on the side rail, like something had tried to grow on steel in air. The thump was louder here. It wasn't in my teeth anymore. It was in my sternum. It shoved at my ribs from the inside. At the bottom, my boots hit a floor that didn't feel like normal deck plating. It felt damp. Not wet exactly. Like touching the skin of a fish through cloth. The hallway beyond didn't match the rest of the station. The walls weren't painted steel. They looked grown, smooth in places, ridged in others like bone covered in metal skin. Pipes didn't run straight. They curved like veins. Cable bundles disappeared into the wall and came out somewhere else like nerves. The lights were red and dim. The air tasted like brine, even though there was no visible water. And the drip I'd been hearing? It wasn't a leak. It was coming from the ceiling in deliberate drops, each one landing with a soft tick that matched the rhythm of the knock. I took a step, and the floor gave slightly under my boot like it was alive enough to notice. "Jesus," I whispered, and the word vanished into the hum. At the end of the hallway was a door. Not a hatch, not a bulkhead, a normal door, wood grain, brass handle, like somebody had built a suburban house in the bottom of the ocean and forgot to remove the entryway. My brain refused it. I stood there staring at it, waiting for my eyes to correct themselves. The thump hit again. The brass handle trembled just slightly, as if something on the other side had touched it at the same time. I should have turned around. I should have climbed back up, eaten my fear, done my contract, and gotten out. Instead, I reached out and put my palm on the wood. It felt dry, not cold, not damp, dry like the inside of an air-conditioned office. I wrapped my fingers around the handle. For a second, nothing happened. Then, without my turning it, the latch clicked. The door opened inward. Air spilled out, warm and clean, and it hit my face like a lie. I stepped inside before I could talk myself out of it. The room was wrong in a way my body understood before my mind did. Dry carpet under my boots. A desk. A lamp with a warm yellow bulb. A framed photograph on the wall of a bright beach. Tourist sand, shallow waves, the kind of place you'd post on social media with a caption about paradise. It smelled like dust and clean paper. No vibration. No drip. The thump vanished. Silence pressed on my ears, so hard it made me dizzy. I'd been living in noise, in pressure, in constant mechanical breath. The sudden absence was like stepping into a vacuum. For one stupid second, relief washed through me, so hard my knees went weak. Then the lamp flickered. The photograph on the wall changed. The bright beach darkened. The shallow waves thickened. The surface turned glassy black. Under it, something huge slid past slow as a continent moving, a shadow with pale streaks like ribs. My breath hitched. I looked down and saw a wet footprint sinking into the carpet, fresh as if something had just walked in behind me. The footprint didn't match a boot. It had long, thin toes with too many joints, pressed deep like whatever made it carried weight that didn't belong. Another footprint appeared beside it, then another, closer, pointing the wrong way like the creature didn't understand how legs worked. I backed toward the door. The brass handle looked normal, polished, innocent. I grabbed it and my palm went cold. Not numb, not painful, just wrong, like my skin had touched something that didn't want skin on it. I yanked. The door opened back into the grown hallway, and the hallway wasn't empty anymore. A figure stood there in the red glow. Human-shaped at first glance, which is how it tricks you. Arms, legs, head. Then your eyes catch the details and your stomach turns. Its skin looked like pale kelp pressed tight over a frame of wire. Not smooth, but fibrous, stretched, with little tears that showed darker tissue beneath. Water beaded on it, but didn't drip like the wetness belonged to it. Its mouth wasn't a mouth. It split the lower face in a vertical seam, opening and closing like a gill. Its eyes weren't eyes. They were flat, dark discs that reflected the room behind me like mirrors. It didn't move toward me. It just listened. And then my brother's voice came out of it, perfectly, without lips. "Come up," it said. "Come up now." My stomach dropped so hard I felt it in my ass. Rage flashed through me, hot and stupid. "Fuck you," I snarled and grabbed the lamp off the desk and hurled it. The lamp hit the thing's head with a dull crack. The bulb shattered. Warm light died instantly. For a heartbeat, everything went red. Emergency glow bleeding through the doorway like a wound. The creature didn't stumble back like a person would. It flinched inward as if my violence helped it focus. Like it had been fuzzy and now it was sharp. The seam mouth opened wider and a sound poured out that made my vision stutter. Not a scream, a signal. Structured tones that climbed and dropped like language without breath. Like sonar trying to become speech. Every metal surface around us answered. The hallway rang. The ladder shaft behind me thrummed. Somewhere above, I heard distant shutters slam like the station was bracing itself. The knock returned. Thump, thump, thump. Louder than ever, and I understood with a sick, cold clarity that it wasn't a heart. It was a fist. Something below the station was knocking from the other side of the world. I ran. I ran back into the hallway, past the dripping ceiling, toward the ladder shaft, and the red lights pulsed faster like they were sinking to the signal. Behind me, the creature didn't chase like a predator. It followed like a tide, patient, certain. My boots slipped on the damp floor. I caught myself on the wall and felt it flex under my palm like muscle. I climbed the ladder like my life depended on it, which, yeah, halfway up, the signal hit again and every rung vibrated. My teeth clacked together. I almost let go. Above, the station's alarms finally started wailing, late as always. Doors clamping, shutters slamming, the whole place turning into a sealed coffin. I burst out on a level 14 and nearly slammed into a security team moving the other way. They grabbed at me. I ducked. I shoved through. Somebody shouted. I didn't stop until I hit the comms room. The door was already open. The shift chief stood inside with 3 guards. Mercer sat in a chair in the corner, restrained, gagged, his head lolling. Salt water dripped from his chin like he'd been held underwater and pulled up just enough to keep him alive. My lungs burned. My ribs screamed. The chief looked at my scraped hands, the blood on my sleeve, the wildness in my face. "Where did you go?" she asked. I laughed, sharp, ugly. "You have a fucking door down there." Her expression didn't change. "You're destabilizing the site. You're keeping something here," I said, and my voice shook with fury. "You're not listening to it. You're not studying it. You're feeding it." One guard stepped forward and grabbed my arm. I jerked away. "Don't touch me." He tightened his grip. "You're coming with us." I swung first. I'll own that. I drove my fist into his throat out of pure animal panic. He folded with a gagging sound. The other 2 guards moved fast, practiced. They pinned me against the console. My cheek hit cold metal. The floor vibrated with a knock below, steady as a heartbeat, like the station had become a drum. The chief crouched so I could see my reflection in the glossy surface of her clean badge. "It's known about us longer than we've known about it," she said, quiet now. "Not for the guards. For me. Like confession. Like she'd been waiting for someone who could understand. It wants interface," she continued. "It wants language. It wants access. We built barriers. It grew keys. What the hell does that mean?" I snarled, trying to twist free. Her eyes flicked to Mercer, and for a moment her voice trembled. "It's learning to wear our voices," she said, "and you just gave it a fresh set of hands." I spat blood and said, "Go to hell." She nodded once, like she'd already filed me under Lost. "Medical," she told the guards. They hauled me toward the corridor. Mercer started thrashing in the chair. The restraints groaned. His gag muffled the sound, but his throat bulged again, worse now, like something inside him was pushing. The medic from earlier stood in the doorway of the med bay with a syringe. She wasn't looking at Mercer's face. She was looking at his abdomen like she expected it to open. "Don't!" I shouted and my voice cracked. "Don't do whatever the fuck you're about to do." The chief didn't look at me. "It's already done," she said. Mercer's back arched. The chair legs skittered on the floor. His eyes rolled up. The sound he made didn't come from lungs. It came from somewhere deeper, vibrating through the chair into the deck plating. The knock answered. The comms panel, unplugged, taped dead, whispered through its dented grill. My brother's voice again, soft and intimate, like he was leaning close. "Let it in," he said. The guards froze for half a second too long, and I used it. I twisted, bit the hand holding my shoulder hard enough to taste skin, tore free, and slammed the medbay door shut behind me. The small window in the door fogged instantly, like the room inside exhaled brine. I didn't try to save Mercer. I'm saying that plain because I need you to understand what kind of person I was in that moment. I ran. I left him to whatever they'd turned him into. That guilt sits on my ribs like another pressure lock. I sprinted down the corridor, past the windows where the ocean pressed like a face against glass, past shuttered sections that shook with distant impacts, past crew members who flattened themselves against the wall and watched me like I was a leak they didn't want to touch. Somebody shouted my name. Not my brother this time. A real human voice. Angry. Commanding. I didn't answer. My badge slapped my chest as I ran. The spiral logo flashed in the lights like an eye. The station's emergency lights had shifted into a slower pulse, and I realized with a sick jolt that the pulse matched the knock. The station was sinking to it, like it was listening, like it was obeying. I hit a sealed door marked Escape Capsule Bay. It should have been locked. It wasn't. The handle turned under my palm as if it had been waiting. Inside, the bay smelled like clean plastic and fear. A single capsule sat in its cradle like an egg. The hull was smooth, white, almost comforting if you didn't think about what it had to survive. Something scraped on the outside of the bay doors behind me. Slow, deliberate, like fingers testing a lock. I climbed into the capsule and slammed the hatch. The interior was tight, all straps and gauges, and a tiny viewport that showed nothing but dark water beyond the bay. My hand shook so hard I missed the first buckle. I swore. I forced my fingers to work. The knock hammered now, not just in the station, but in the capsule hull, fast and impatient. Not from a station side, from the ocean side. A single clean tone pinged through the hull, crisp as sonar. A question, then another, slightly higher, then another like something counting. The capsule's release lever sat under a safety cover. Red. Simple. Stupidly final. I flipped the cover up, and in the tiny space between one knock and the next, I heard my brother's voice one last time. Not pleading, not warning, just calm, like he'd finally learned how to sound like he meant it. "Take it with you," he whispered. My stomach clenched. "What?" I rasped to nobody. The capsule shuddered as something heavy pressed against it from outside. The gauges twitched. The lever weighted under my shaking hand. My hand hovered over the lever, and I swear the capsule felt like it inhaled. The knock hit the hull again, harder, faster, and the little viewport rattled in its frame. In that tiny circle of glass, the water outside wasn't just dark. It looked thick, like ink with weight, like it didn't want to move out of the way. Something scraped along the outside of the bay doors. Not the platform, not the station, the capsule. A slow drag from nose to tail like fingernails on a locker door. I flipped the safety and pulled the lever. The cradle clamps released with a violent clack that I felt in my spine. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The capsule hung there, suspended, and my brain had enough time to do the math. If it doesn't eject, if it jams, if the bay floods. Then the ejection charge fired. The capsule kicked forward and dropped into black like a stone. Every strap bit into me. My stomach tried to stay behind. The noise was huge for something happening in water. More vibration than sound. The whole hull ringing as it slid out of the bay and into the ocean proper. And right away, the scraping came back. Closer now, almost affectionate, like hands settling on the outside. The knock stopped. The silence that followed was worse than any alarm. The only sound was my own breath, too loud in the small cabin, and the faint tick of gauges. The ascent system whined to life, rising where that made my teeth itch. Ballast purged. The capsule started to rise. The viewport showed nothing but black for a long time. Then a faint shimmer, like silt or plankton caught in the capsule's lights. A clean tone pinged through the hull. Not the capsule system, not my instruments. This came from outside. It hit the metal like a question and made my ribs hum. Then another ping answered it, from deeper, farther, so low I felt it more than heard it. Call in response. Like I just left a room and two things were talking about me in the hallway. I swallowed hard. My mouth tasted like copper and brine. I hadn't swallowed seawater. I hadn't bitten my tongue. And still salt. The straps creaked as the capsule rose. The ascent was too fast. I knew it. I'd been in enough rescue pods to know the difference between get to the surface and get to the surface without your blood boiling. The gauges didn't care. The capsule shuddered again, and for a sick instant, I thought something had struck it from below. Then I felt it, pressure changing in my sinuses, in my teeth, in the soft meat behind my eyes. Ears popping, then popping again like bubble wrap. The lights flickered once. In that flicker, the viewport showed something pale sliding alongside the capsule, so close it filled the circle. Not a fish, not an animal I had any words for. A surface like wet stone and kelp, jointed in places, smooth in others. A ridge that might have been a spine, a line of openings that might have been gills. And then an eye, flat, dark, mirror black. It reflected the inside of my capsule back at me perfectly, except in the reflection, I wasn't alone. Something sat behind my shoulder, too close to fit in the cabin. I whipped around so hard a strap bit into my throat. There was nothing there, just molded plastic, just gauges, just a tiny coffin I'd strapped myself into. When I looked back at the viewport, the eye was gone. The capsule kept rising like it had places to be. My phone was gone. My watch was gone. Time stopped being something I could measure. All I had were the gauges and my own body, and my body started sending messages I didn't like. My fingers tingled. My lips went numb. A pressure built behind my breastbone like someone had shoved a fist into my chest and was slowly closing it. Decompression sickness isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a creeping rawness, a sense that your blood is full of needles. I try to slow my breathing the way divers do. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Long exhales. The cabin smelled like clean plastic and stale oxygen and something else. A faint iodine, right like fish left too long in a cooler. I forced myself to focus on the straps, the buckles, the emergency procedures stenciled on the wall. Anchor your mind. Don't spiral. The spiral. My station badge was still clipped to my chest. It bumped the straps with every shudder. The Nautilus-like logo caught the little cabin light. The curve didn't close. It kept going. I stared at it too long, and the lines started to look like they were moving, not visually in feeling, like my eyes wanted to follow the curve forever. A ping hit the hull again. Crisp, clean, almost polite. The capsule's instruments beeped in response like they'd mistaken it for their own sonar. I laughed once, thin and ugly. Yeah, I whispered to the black water outside. Sure, great. You can have the capsule. You can have the whole ocean. Just let me out. My brother's voice answered immediately, so close it sounded like it came from my own mouth. You already are, it said. I froze. My throat tightened. No, I said, and it came out as a croak. The gauges flickered. The capsule shuddered. The sound of something dragging across the hull returned, faster now, like fingers drumming. Then 3 knocks. Not the deep knock. Not the station. Small. Precise. On the outside of the capsule. Someone, something, knocking like it wanted to be let in. I shut my eyes hard and pressed my forehead to the harness strap. I didn't look. I didn't give it the satisfaction of seeing fear reflected back. The ascent system screamed in its own sterile way, warning tones and flashing text about rate limits and pressure differentials. I couldn't do anything about it. The capsule wasn't a car you could tap the brakes on. It was a bullet someone had decided to fire. My body started to feel light, then heavy, then wrong in a way that made my stomach roll. A sudden, sharp pain stabbed my shoulder, then my knee, then my jaw, like tiny explosions in joints. I bit down hard because if I opened my mouth, I was afraid something would come out of it that wasn't words. The pings outside changed. They started coming faster, layered, overlapping like a chorus of sonar. One high, one low, one in the middle. The hull sang with it. My teeth sang with it. And somewhere below all that, like the bass line in a song you can't escape, the deep knock returned, faint but steady, as if the thing under the station was still knocking, even from miles away, and the ocean was carrying it to me like a promise. Then the capsule hit a thermocline, cold water slamming into warmer, and the whole cabin jolted. The viewport clouded with tiny bubbles and streaks of bioluminescence, greenish-blue sparks that crawled over the glass like living static. For a second, it was almost beautiful. Then a shape moved through the sparks, huge and slow, and all the little lights gathered around it like insects around a porch bulb. My lungs seized. I didn't have enough air. That made no sense. The gauges said oxygen was fine. The cabin was pressurized, but my body didn't care what the gauges said. My hands clawed at the straps. I fumbled for the emergency O2 mask like that would fix panic. My fingers slipped. They were wet. I stared at them. There was moisture beading on my knuckles, sliding down my palm. Condensation? Sweat? No, it smelled like brine. The cabin was sweating seawater. I wiped my hand on my coveralls. The dampness didn't smear like sweat. It felt thin, cold, salty like it belonged outside. The capsule rose through darker water into slightly less dark water, then into a gray-green murk where distant light existed as a rumor. My ears popped again. Pain flared behind my eyes. I tasted pennies and salt and that faint rot like iodine and fish. Then the capsule lurched. A hard impact. The straps snapped tight. My teeth slammed together. Something hit the hull from below and stuck. The capsule started to yaw, rolling slightly, and the ascent system whined in protest. In the viewport, I saw it. A pale limb, if you can call it that, wrapped around the capsule's side. Not a tentacle, not a fin, something jointed like a hand made of too many elbows. Its skin was slick and fibrous like kelp pulled tight. It didn't squeeze. It held, like a person putting a palm on a moving car's trunk to steady themselves. My throat closed. I tried to scream, and only air came out. The limb slid up toward the viewport and stopped just below it, like it knew exactly where my eyes were. Then, very slowly, a seam opened along the limb, a vertical slit like a gill mouth, and a sound came out. Not the pings, not the knock, a wet inhale, a breath in water. It breathed against my capsule like it was smelling me through metal. And then my brother's voice, perfect and calm, came through the hull itself. "Good," it said. "Good. You did good." My vision tunneled. "It tasted bile." My hands shook so hard I couldn't unclench them. "Stop," I whispered. "Stop. Stop. Stop." The limb didn't move. It just rode with me, clinging gently like it knew I couldn't shake it loose and didn't need to prove it. The capsule broke into brighter water, sunlight filtering down in long, sick columns. My eyes hurt at the sudden shift. The cabin light felt dim now. The limb outside began to peel away. Slow, reluctant. It slid down the hull with a last soft scrape, leaving behind something. A smear on the white capsule surface, dark and glossy. For a second, I thought it was oil. Then I saw it twitch. A small ripple along the smear like muscle. My stomach heaved. I gagged, and the taste of salt flooded my mouth so hard it made my eyes water. The limb vanished into the green. The capsule shot upward faster, like it had been freed from a hand. The surface came at me. The world went white with glare. Then a slam, hard enough to jolt my spine, and the capsule bobbed, rocking violently. Waves smacked the hull in loud. Normal slaps that should have felt comforting. They didn't, because even on the surface, I could feel it. The deep knock, faint now but there, like a heartbeat in the pipes of the world. I fumbled for the hatch release with shaking hands. When the hatch finally cracked open, fresh air rushed in, salty and cold, and I sucked it like a drowning man, even though I wasn't drowning anymore. Gray sky, wind, spray. A vessel circled close, a rigid inflatable with men in helmets and face shields. Not rig crew, not Coast Guard, something in between. They moved like they'd rehearsed this. A loudspeaker crackled. Remain seated, a voice barked. Do not exit without instruction. I laughed, hysterical. Yeah, I shouted back. Sure, I'll just sit here. A hook snagged the capsule. They hauled it toward the larger ship, some kind of support vessel with no name painted on the side, just a number. Gloved hands clamped onto the hatch. Someone shoved a mask on my face before I could protest. It smelled like rubber and antiseptic. I tried to talk. A hand pressed my chin up firm. Breathe, a voice said. Not kind, not cruel, just procedural. They lifted me out like I was fragile and filthy at the same time. Boots on deck, bright floodlights, the smell of diesel and wet metal. They didn't ask if I was hurt. They scanned me. A wand over my chest, my arms, my mouth like I was a cargo crate. Another wand over my badge. When it beeped, the tech holding it stiffened. He looked at the officer in charge. The officer's eyes narrowed. "Remove it," he said. A gloved hand reached for my badge. "No." I snapped and slapped the hand away, pure reflex. The officer grabbed my wrist. His grip was iron. "You don't get to say no. I was told not to let anyone take it," I said, breath ragged behind the mask. "That wasn't for your protection," he said low. "That was for ours." He yanked the badge off, to clip it into my shirt. For a split second, the spiral logo flashed in the floodlight. And I swear to God the line shifted. Not visually, in feeling, like they adjusted to being watched. The officer dropped it into a sealed bag and handed it to someone who vanished toward the ship's interior like the badge was radioactive. They guided me, half carried me, down a corridor into a decking room that smelled like bleach trying to drown the smell of ocean. My boots squelched. I looked down and saw wet footprints on the metal floor. Not mine. Long, thin toes. Too many joints. I blinked hard. They were gone. Just water streaks. Just my brain desperate to make sense of terror. "Sit," a medic ordered. Not the station medic. Different face, same tone. I sat on a plastic bench. They cut my coveralls off with shears like I was a patient in an ER. Cold air hit my skin. My body shook. A man in a suit stood behind a clear partition, watching like he was watching an experiment. He held a clipboard like it was a weapon. The medic swabbed my mouth, my ears, under my nails. When she touched my left hand, she paused. "What?" I demanded. She didn't answer, just pressed harder under my fingernail. A sharp pain. Then, a dark sliver emerged. Not blood, not dirt. A thin thread of black, glossy material, like the stuff Mercer had spit into the drain. It wriggled once in the medic's gloved fingers. My stomach dropped into my shoes. "Get off," I said, voice breaking. "Get the fuck off." The medic dropped it into a vial and sealed it fast, like she was afraid it would leap. The man behind the partition leaned closer. His eyes were bright in the fluorescent light, hungry in a way that made my skin crawl. "Where did you go?" he asked. Same question as the chief, different mouth. I laughed again, because apparently that was my new coping mechanism. "Down," I said. "I went down." "Describe," he said. "You already know?" I snapped. "You people always already know." His jaw tightened. "Answer the question." I stared at him through the glass and felt the ocean still moving under the hull. Felt waves slap metal. Felt the faint knock in the ship's pipes like a reminder. "You have a fucking door," I said. "A door to nowhere. A room with dry carpet. A thing where my brother's voice. And you're all acting like this is a broken pump." The medic injected something into my arm without warning. Cold fire. My head swam. The suit man watched my pupils like he was timing something. "You were exposed," he said, like he was reading a weather report. "You will comply with quarantine. You will comply with hydration protocol. You will comply with audio monitoring. If you hear anything, you will report it." "Hydration protocol," I slurred. "You mean don't drink the ocean?" He didn't smile. "We mean don't crave it." I tried to stand. My legs wobbled like they didn't belong to me. "I want to go home," I said. He leaned in closer to the glass. "Home is a shoreline," he said. "Shorelines are porous. You're porous. That's the problem. You're insane," I spat. He turned away like he'd heard that 1,000 times. They kept me in a small room with no windows and a vent that hissed cold air like breath. A camera in the corner. A speaker in the ceiling. They told me it was for my safety. I didn't believe them. They brought me water in sealed bottles. I drank one, and it tasted normal for half a second. Then it tasted like salt. Not seawater salt. Metal salt. Like licking a penny. I threw the bottle, and it bounced off the wall with a hollow plastic thud. A voice crackled through the ceiling speaker. "Hydration compliance," it said. It wasn't my brother. It was me. My own voice, flat and recorded, saying words I hadn't spoken. My skin went cold. I stared up at the speaker grill. "Who the fuck is that?" I shouted. Silence. Then, softer like a whisper from the vent, "Drink." I backed into a corner. My heart hammered. The knock in my teeth came back faintly, like my fillings remembered the rhythm. I spent what felt like days in that room. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. Time gets weird when you don't see daylight. They monitored me. They asked questions. Same questions, different suits. What did it look like? What did it say? What direction did the pings come from? Did you respond? Did you dream? I told them nothing useful, partly out of spite, and partly because every time I tried to describe it, my tongue felt thick and my mouth filled with salt, and because I wasn't sure which parts were mine anymore. At some point, the shift chief came into the room. She looked different out of the station. The clean badge was gone. Her hair was looser. For the first time, she looked tired. She dismissed the guards with a gesture. They left, but the cameras stayed. "You made a mess," she said. "Mercer," I said immediately. "What happened to him?" Her eyes flicked away. The crack in her comm widened. "Mercer isn't your concern," she said. And I knew that meant Mercer was gone in a way that made death look polite. "You're feeding it," I said, voice hoarse. "Why? Why the hell would you?" She cut me off. "Because if we don't, it pushes harder." Pushes. I laughed ugly. Like it's a door-to-door salesman? She stepped closer. "Like it's pressure," she said. "Like it's depth. Like it's the ocean itself deciding it wants inside." She rubbed her thumb over a spot on her wrist absent-mindedly, and I saw faint marks there. Red pressure lines like Mercer had, only older. "Healed. You think we built Kestrel Station," she said. "We didn't. We found a structure. We built around it. We put instruments on it. We put locks on it. And it learned what locks are. Istir de here. So you're telling me there's a city down there?" Her mouth tightened. "We don't use that word. What word do you use?" She hesitated, and for the first time she looked like someone about to say a prayer. "Habitat," she said. The vent hissed. The speaker in the ceiling clicked softly like it was listening. "And it wants interface," I said, remembering her earlier phrase. She nodded once. "It wants a bridge, a translator, something that can carry its signal out of depth and into our systems." "You mean like me?" I said. Her eyes met mine, sharp and honest for one brutal second. "Yes," she said. "Like you." My stomach twisted. "I didn't do anything." "You opened the door," she said, simple as that. "You engaged. You showed it anger. You showed it fear. You gave it your brother." My throat tightened. "Don't say his name." She didn't, but her gaze flicked to my mouth. "It likes familiar shapes," she said. "Familiar voices. Familiar routines. It uses what it finds." I swallowed hard. "Then why let me go?" Her expression went blank again, like a mask sliding back into place. "Because keeping you would create a different mess," she said. "We're not equipped to hold unstable interface candidates indefinitely." "Interface candidates," I echoed, disgusted. She leaned in. Her voice dropped. "Listen to me," she said. "Do not go near open water. Do not dive. Do not swim. Do not take long showers. Do not drink alcohol. Do not. Don't drink brine," I finished bitter. Her jaw tightened. "If you hear voices, report." "To who?" I snapped. "You? The suit guys? The speaker in the ceiling that talks in my voice." Her eyes flicked to the camera. "You will receive a contact number." "You're threatening me." "I'm trying to keep you alive," she said, and there was no softness in it. Just urgency wrapped in authority. I laughed again. "Alive for what?" She didn't answer. She turned to leave, paused at the door. "Whatever came up with you," she said without looking back. "It won't feel like a monster at first. It'll feel like thirst." Then she was gone. They released me the next day, or what they told me was the next day, with paperwork and a check that cleared too fast. They brought me back to shore on a small boat in early morning fog. The sea was steel gray. The harbor lights were smeared halos. Gulls screamed like they were laughing. I sat on the bench in the boat with a blanket around my shoulders, and two men in plain jackets watched me like I might jump overboard. I considered it, just to see if the ocean would take me gently. When we reached the dock, A black SUV waited. I laughed at that too, because of course, one of the jacket men leaned close. "You'll tell people you worked a classified comms job," he said. "You'll tell them you got spooked by pressure and quit. You'll keep your mouth shut." "And if I don't?" I asked. He nodded toward the water. The harbor was calm, but under it, I could almost imagine the deep knock traveling through pilings, through ropes, through the dock boards. "You don't want to find out," he said. They drove me to a hotel near the marina, because apparently they couldn't stand the idea of me being far from water, even on land, and made me sign more forms. Then they left me alone with a minibar I wasn't allowed to touch and a bathroom whose faucet dripped once every 30 seconds. It shouldn't have mattered, but that drip felt like a metronome, like the station's drip, like the knock translated into a smaller language. I sat on the bed and stared at the bathroom door for an hour because I didn't trust what might be on the other side. When I finally went to pee, the mirror above the sink was fogged. The room was dry. The AC was blasting. The mirror still had a hazy film like breath had touched it. I wiped it with my palm. A spiral was traced in the condensation, neat as a fingerprint. My heart slammed so hard I felt in my teeth. I backed away and the spiral stayed. The faucet dripped again. Thump. Not loud, not impossible, just present. I left that hotel and drove north along the coast, away from that harbor, away from that fog. I needed distance. I needed dry air. You can't really get dry air when you live on the edge of the ocean. Everything smells like salt, even when you pretend it doesn't. My apartment was in a coastal town I used to love. Cheap rent, ocean view from the parking lot if you lean just right, the constant hush of waves at night like white noise for the soul. Now, the waves sounded like something breathing. I got inside and immediately went to the kitchen sink. I don't know why. Instinct. Habit. Thirst I didn't want to admit. I turned on the tap and drank straight from it like a dehydrated animal. The water was cold and tasted normal for half a second. Then the salt hit. Not enough to gag, just enough to make my mouth want more. I jerked back like I'd been slapped. My hand shook. I stared at the faucet like it had betrayed me. I didn't sleep that first night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the mirror black eye in the viewport reflecting the inside of my capsule with something behind my shoulder. Every time the building pipes ticked, my molars hummed. Around 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed. I got a new phone on the drive home because they'd taken my old one and lost it. The new phone's number was only in my own head and in whatever system those suit guys used. The screen lit up with a blocked number. My throat went tight. I let it ring. It stopped. A voicemail notification popped up. I didn't want to listen. My thumb still pressed play. The voicemail was empty except for slow breathing. Not human breathing. Wet inhalations with pauses too long. A faint gurgle like water in a throat that didn't need air. Then, one soft word barely audible. Drink. I threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered down. The screen didn't crack. Of course it didn't. Nothing broke the way I wanted anymore. I spent the next day doing stupid normal things to prove I was still a person. Grocery store. Laundry. Took out trash. Avoided looking at puddles on the sidewalk because I didn't trust what might reflect back. Everywhere I went, water followed me in small ways. Condensation on cold soda cans. Ice melting in cups. Wet footprints near the fish counter that looked too long. At the grocery store, I walked past the seafood section and almost vomited. Not because it smelled bad, because it smelled like Kestrel Station. Brine and iodine, and that faint rot like fish left too long in a car trunk. My hands went numb. My vision narrowed. I heard the knock in the tiled floor under my shoes. I abandoned my cart and left. At home, I tried to take a shower and couldn't. The second the water hit the tub, the sound of it running down the drain made my teeth sing. The steam fogged the mirror, and I kept expecting to see that spiral appear again. I stood there naked in the bathroom with the shower running, shaking, and then I shut it off and sat on the closed toilet lid, dripping, and laughed until it sounded like crying. 3 days after I got back, 3 nights really, I woke up with my mouth full of spit that tasted like salt. Not I ate chip salt. Ocean salt. Cold, clean, wrong. I bolted upright in bed, heart hammering. For a second, I thought I was back in the capsule. Straps, viewport, pings. But I was in my apartment. Dark room. The faint roar of surf outside. My tongue felt thick. My throat felt dry like paper. My entire body screamed for water. I stumbled into the kitchen and turned on the tap. I drank. I drank until my stomach sloshed, until my teeth hurt from cold, until my hands cramped from gripping the counter. It didn't help. The thirst didn't go away. It grew. It wasn't a physical thirst anymore. It was a pull, a need like gravity. I sank to the floor with my back against the cabinet and pressed my palm to my mouth, trying not to drink more. The pipes in the wall vibrated softly. Thump, thump, thump. Not the loud station knock. Not the capsule. Small, domestic, like the deep had learned how to whisper through plumbing. I froze, listening. The knock moved. It traveled along the pipes like footsteps in a hallway. It went behind the dishwasher, then behind the sink, then behind the fridge. Then it stopped under the floor, directly beneath me. A single clean ping rang through the metal, high and crisp, and my fillings sang in response. My phone buzzed. Block number again. I didn't answer. It rang 3 times, then stopped. A new voicemail. I didn't listen. I couldn't. Instead, I crawled to the bathroom and turned on the light like brightness could keep something out. The mirror above the sink was fogged again. There was no steam, no running water. Still fogged. This time, the spiral wasn't traced in it. A message was. Just 3 letters, wiped clean through condensation like someone had pressed a finger there. Yes. My stomach rolled. I backed away, and my heel hit the tub. The shower curtain rustled. Something dripped. Not from the faucet. Not from the shower head. From the ceiling above the tub. One slow drop of water forming where there was no leak, no stain, no reason. It fell into the tub with a soft, perfect tick. Then another. Then another. Keeping time with the knock in the pipes. I grabbed a towel and wiped the ceiling. My hand came away wet and cold and salty. I wiped my tongue with the towel like an idiot, desperate to get the taste out. It made it worse. The towel tasted like ocean. I didn't go to work after that. I called in sick and didn't explain. I sat in my apartment with every light on and every faucet taped shut like that mattered. The knock kept coming in small ways. Sometimes it was in the pipes. Sometimes it was in the baseboard near the bathroom. Sometimes it was in the radiator, even though it was summer and the radiator didn't run. Always 3 beats. Always patient. And always, after the knock, a ping. Like a question. Like a check-in. One night, I tried to fight it the only way I could think to fight anything, by being angry. I went to the kitchen, ripped the tape off the faucet, and turned it on full blast. Water roared into the sink. It splashed. It sounded normal. Domestic. Harmless. I leaned over it and shouted into the drain like a lunatic. What do you want? I screamed. You want me to drink? You want me to dive? You want me to open a door? Fuck you. You hear me? Fuck you. The water kept running. For a second, nothing happened. Then the drain made a sound. Not gurgling. Not air bubbles. A wet inhale, like something breathing through the pipes. And then, perfectly in my brother's voice, soft, close, intimate, my name. I went cold. Rage evaporated like it had never existed. Don't, I whispered, voice breaking. Don't use him. The drain answered with my own voice this time, flat and calm, repeating my words back at me like a parrot. Don't use him. I stumbled back from the sink, so fast I hit the fridge. My hand shook. My mouth filled with salt again, thick and hot. The water in the sink changed. It stopped being clear. A dark sheen spread across its surface like oil, then gathered into a thin thread that curled and curled, drawing a spiral that didn't close. My vision blurred. I blinked hard, and the spiral was gone. Just water. Just reflections of my ceiling light wobbling in the sink basin. I shut the faucet off with shaking hands and wrapped my palms in a towel like cloth could protect me from sound. The next morning, someone knocked on my door. Normal knock. Human rhythm. I froze anyway. Every knock was suspect now. I looked through the peephole. 2 men in plain jackets. Same kind as the doc. One held a clipboard. The other held a small black case. My stomach dropped. I didn't open the door. They knocked again. Mr. Raines, one called, using my name like it was a code. I backed away from the door and stepped on something wet. I looked down. A footprint on my hardwood floor. Fresh. Shiny. Too long. Too many joints. It led from my bathroom to my front door. Like something had walked there before the men arrived. My throat closed. The men knocked again. "We need to talk," the voice said. The pipes behind my wall knocked in response. 3 beats. The men's knock didn't match it, but the timing did, like they were syncing without knowing it. I grabbed my keys and ran. Not to a car, because the thought of being trapped in a metal box again made my skin crawl, but out the back stairwell of my building, down into the parking lot, and toward the one place I couldn't avoid in a coastal town. The water. The harbor was a 10-minute walk. A move like I was being chased, heart hammering, mouth tasting salt, ears catching every drip and splash like it was a voice. Fog rolled in off the sea, thick enough to wet my hair and coat my eyelashes. Everything smelled like brine. Boats rocked against their moorings. Lines creaked. Metal hulls groaned softly like animals shifting in sleep. I stopped at the end of the pier and stared out. The ocean looked calm, gray-green, chopped by wind. A normal sea, but beneath it I could feel it. That slow, patient knock, vibrating up through pilings, through boards, through my bones. My fillings hummed. A gull shrieked overhead. Somewhere, a buoy bell clanged in the fog like an old warning. My phone buzzed. Blocked number. I didn't even look this time. I turned it off. The water lapped at the pier in lazy slaps. Each slap came in 3s. I backed away from the edge, suddenly terrified of my own feet. A fisherman at the next slip glanced at me, annoyed. "You all right?" he called. I tried to answer, and only a croak came out. He spit into the water. "Town's full of weirdos," he muttered, and went back to his nets. I walked past him and saw something in his bait bucket. Not fish. A smear of black, glossy thread coiled at the bottom, curling into a spiral. I blinked, and it was just a tangle of seaweed. My brain was turning everything into signals, everything into patterns. I kept walking until I hit the old breakwater where kids used to jump into the water on hot days. A concrete wall slick with algae, barnacles clinging like teeth. The fog was thicker here. The sea sounded louder. The waves slapped the rocks with wet violence. I stood there and realized with a sudden, awful clarity that I wasn't running away from the water. I was running to it. My body wanted to lean forward, to climb down, to put my hands in it, to drink. The craving was a physical ache behind my eyes. "Fuck," I whispered and pressed my palm against my mouth like that would hold the thirst in. Behind me, footsteps on wet concrete. Spoon. The shift chief stood there, coat pulled tight, hair damp with fog. "Novarts. Novai." Just her, looking like she hadn't slept in days. "How did you?" I started. "Stop," she said. Her voice was raw now. "Just stop moving." I laughed sharp. "You following me now?" "I'm trying to keep you from doing something you can't undo," she snapped. "That's rich," I said, and anger rose like bile. "You people built a station around a fucking abyssal city, fed it, lied to everyone, and now you're worried about what I do." Her jaw clenched. "You're compromised." "Yeah," I said. "Nosleep." She stepped closer, boots squelching on algae. "It attached to you," she said. "The capsule logs confirm contact." My skin crawled. "So you saw it." "I saw the smear," she said, and her voice tightened like she hated the word. "I saw what it left on your hull." "It's in me," I whispered, and the words felt like admitting infection. She didn't deny it. That was the worst part. "It doesn't need to be in you," she said. "Not fully. Not yet." "Then get out," I snapped. "Cut me open. Burn it. Whatever you have to do." Her eyes flashed. "You think we haven't tried? You think Mercer was the first?" Mercer's name hit me like a shove. "What happened to him?" I demanded again. Her face broke for half a second. "Grief, maybe, or guilt, or both." "He opened," she said quietly. "He became a valve." I swallowed hard. "That's not an answer." It's the only one I have, she said. The sea slapped the breakwater. 3 beats. I felt my body lean forward again, subtle, like the ocean had hooked my ribs with invisible fingers. The chief grabbed my sleeve hard. "Look at me," she ordered. I did. My eyes burned. "It's using thirst because thirst is honest," she said. "You can't argue with your body. You can argue with fear. You can argue with voices. You can't argue with dehydration." "I'm not dehydrated," I hissed. "I'm full of water. I've been drinking like." Her grip tightened. "Not water," she said. "Salinity." My mouth filled with spit again, salty and thick. She watched it happen with a look that made my stomach twist, like she'd seen this exact moment on other faces. "I came to give you one chance," she said. "One directive." I laughed. "Oh, you're giving directives now? You're gonna hand me another checklist?" Her eyes hardened. "Do not go into the water," she said. "No matter what you hear, no matter what you crave, no matter whose voice it uses." My throat tightened. "It's using my brother." "I know," she said, and for a second her voice softened in a way that made it worse. "And it will use anyone else it can get from your head. It will dig." The fog thickened. The sea disappeared into gray. A buoy bell clanged again out there, distant, lonely. My phone buzzed in my pocket, even though it was off. I froze. "That's not possible," I whispered. The chief's eyes flicked to my pocket. Her face went pale. "Give it to me," she said. I pulled the phone out. The screen was dark. No power, no signal, and yet it vibrated again in my palm like a heartbeat. 3 pulses. Then it stopped. A cold dread crawled up my spine. The chief backed away a step. "It's not the phone," she whispered. "It's you." My mouth went dry, then flooded with salt again. In the corner of my vision, something moved in the water at the base of the breakwater. Just a darker shadow in darker water. Then another shadow beside it. Then another. A line of slow shapes gathering where the algae-slick concrete met the sea. I stepped back, then forward again without meaning to. The chief cursed, a real swear, and grabbed me with both hands. "Don't," she snarled, and her nails dug into my arm through my jacket. "Don't you fucking do it." My eyes locked on the water. In the slap of waves against concrete, I started hearing syllables. Not words exactly, patterns that almost formed language. A rising tone, a falling tone, like the signal in the hallway. My teeth sang. Then, in the fog behind me, a familiar voice called my name. I jerked my head toward it. My brother stood 10 feet away on the breakwater. Not a memory, not a thought. A figure in wet clothes, hair plastered to his forehead, face pale, eyes red-rimmed. He looked exactly the way he'd looked the last time I saw him alive, leaning out of his car window with a cigarette and a stupid grin. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I'd puke. "Hey," he said, voice warm. "Real." The chief sucked in a breath like she'd been punched. My brother's gaze slid past her like she didn't exist. "Come on," he said to me, gentle. "You don't have to be scared. You don't have to be alone down there." I took a step before I realized it. The chief yanked me back. "That's not him," she hissed. My brother smiled wider, and something about it was wrong. Too many teeth. Too still. "I am," he said, and the words came out with a faint, wet echo, like they were spoken through a pipe. My eyes burned. "Stop," I whispered. "Stop doing that." His smile faltered, not like hurt, but like confusion, like it didn't understand why this shape wasn't working the way it wanted. Behind him, the fog thickened and the air tasted like pennies. The chief shouted, sharp and commanding, like she was back on the station. "Do you hear a knock?" I blinked, thrown. "What?" "Do you hear the knock?" she repeated. My fillings hummed. The pipes of the harbor, the metal boats, the concrete under my boots, all of it vibrated faintly with that 3-beat rhythm. "Yes," I whispered. "Good," she said, voice tight. "Then you can still distinguish it. That means you can still choose." My brother tilted his head, and the movement was wrong. Too smooth, like a hinge. "You don't have to choose," he said. "Just come down. Just drink." My throat spasmed at the word. The sea slapped the breakwater again, harder. One of the dark shapes at the base rose slightly, and for a second, I saw pale jointed fingers, if you can call them fingers, curling on algae-slick concrete like a hand on a ladder rung. My chest seized. The chief's grip tightened until it hurt. "If you go in," she said low, "you won't come back as you." "Then what do I do?" I rasped. Her eyes flicked over my face like she was reading a gauge. "You starve it," she said. "You don't feed it attention. You don't feed it fear. You don't feed it thirst." "That's impossible," I choked. "It's inside me." She swallowed hard. "Then you live with impossible," she said. My brother took a step closer. His shoes made no sound on wet concrete. The chief pulled a small device out of her coat, black, palm-sized, with a single button. "What is that?" I demanded. She didn't answer, just raised it toward my face. "Don't," my brother said, and his voice sharpened into something inhuman for a split second, like metal scraping metal. The chief pressed the button. A tone burst out, ultrasonic, high enough it was more pressure than sound. It stabbed behind my eyes. My teeth rang. The world wobbled. The dark shapes in the water jerked as if the tone had hit them like a slap. The pale fingers slipped. My brother's face shifted. His skin rippled like a reflection disturbed by a stone. His eyes went mirror black. His mouth split into a vertical seam, opening and closing like a gill. The human shape collapsed into something thinner, taller, wronger, kelp skin over wireframe. Flat, dark discs reflecting fog and sea. It didn't scream. It signaled. A structured series of rising and falling tones that made the harbor's metal sing in sympathy. Boat masts vibrated. Dock lines hummed. The buoy bell clanged wildly like it was trying to keep up. The knock in my teeth surged. I cried out involuntary. The chief shoved the device into my hand. "Run," she barked. "Run inland. Go somewhere dry. Somewhere loud. Somewhere with no pipes." "In a coastal town?" I screamed back. "Are you kidding me?" "Run," she repeated, and her voice cracked like she was terrified. I did. I ran like a coward, like an animal, like someone whose body didn't belong to him anymore. Up the breakwater, past the fisherman staring with his mouth open, past tourists who turned and gawked, through fog that wet my lungs. Behind me, I heard the signal echo through the harbor, and under it, the deep knock answered, distant but certain. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until my lungs burned and my legs shook and I was half a mile from the water, in the middle of town where the air still smelled like salt, because salt gets everywhere. I ducked into a laundromat because it was the first place I saw with bright fluorescent lights and spinning machines and the promise of noise. Dryers thumped. Quarters clinked. Someone argued into a phone in Spanish. The place smelled like detergent and damp clothes. I sat on a plastic chair and pressed my palms to my mouth, trying to keep myself from tasting salt. The device the chief had given me sat in my hand like a dead insect. My fingers were cramped around it. A woman loading a washer glanced at me, suspicious. "You all right?" she asked. I nodded too fast. "Yeah," I lied. The dryers thumped. 3 beats. I jerked my head toward them. A dryer door rattled slightly. Then another. The laundromat's plumbing gurgled. And there was again the faintest wet inhale just under the normal sounds. I stood so fast the chair scraped. The woman frowned. "Hey." I backed away from the washers like they were mouths. My phone, still off, vibrated in my pocket. 3 pulses. I stumbled out of the laundromat into fog and salt air and realized something that made my stomach drop. There is no place with no water. Even dry is a joke. Pipes, drains, humidity, blood, saliva, tears. I walked home like a man carrying a bomb in his chest. The 2 men in plain jackets were gone from my building's hallway, but their presence lingered like cigarette smoke. My apartment door was unlocked. I knew I'd locked it. I stood in the doorway for a long time, staring into my own dark living room like it belonged to someone else now. A drip sounded from the bathroom. Tick, 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 keeping time. I stepped inside. The air smelled like brine and clean detergent, a sick mix. The bathroom mirror was fogged again, thick this time, like someone had exhaled hard onto it. On the fog, the spiral was traced neat and perfect. Under it, in my own handwriting, because it looked like mine, every slant and hook, 2 words. Open up. My throat closed. No, y whispered. The drip from the ceiling hit the tub again. Tick. The pipes in the wall knocked. Thump, thump, thump. The sound traveled through my apartment like footsteps. Under the sink, behind the toilet, through the wall into the bedroom. Then it stopped directly under the floor beneath the bed, like it was lying down where I lay. My skin crawled. I backed out of the bathroom and went to the kitchen because the kitchen sink had become my enemy and my craving. I didn't want to look at it. I looked anyway. The sink basin was dry. The faucet was off, but the drain was wet. A thin dark film coated it, glossy as oil. It pulsed once. My stomach lurched. I slammed a cup over the drain like that could trap anything. The cup rattled in my hands, and I realized my hands were wet again. Not sweat, brine. It beaded on my knuckles and ran down my palms. I wiped my hands on my shirt. The salt smeared and dried sticky. My mouth flooded with spit. I swallowed and gagged on salt. I stumbled to the living room and tried to sit on the couch. The cushions were damp. I pressed my palm into the fabric and lifted it. A wet footprint sank into the couch cushion. Long toes, too many joints, fresh. I backed away until my shoulders hit the wall. I wanted to call someone. Police, friends, my mother, anyone. But who do you call when the ocean is knocking from inside your pipes? My phone buzzed again. This time the screen lit up on its own. No service, no power, and yet the screen showed a call. Caller ID, Rains. My own last name. My throat tightened until it hurt. The phone rang. I didn't answer. It rang 3 times, then stopped. A voicemail notification appeared. Against my better judgment, I pressed play. Silence for a second, then the slow, wet breathing. Then my voice. Not a recording of me. Not something ripped from a voicemail. It sounded like me standing in the room, mouth close to the mic, but without warmth, without breath behind the words. Hi, it said. I froze. Hi. It repeated, testing the syllable. Then, softer, like it was tasting it. Hey. My stomach turned. Then my brother's voice slid into the line like an old song. Come on, he said gently. Just open up. The voicemail cut off. My phone went dark. The drip stopped. The apartment went still. That silence didn't mean safety. It meant attention. I spent that night sitting on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet, a flashlight in my lap, watching the sink because I couldn't stop watching it. The craving came in waves. Sometimes it was mild, like wanting a glass of water after salty food. Sometimes it hit so hard my whole body leaned toward the faucet like a magnet. I bit my knuckles until I tasted blood, because blood tasted less salty than the spit in my mouth. Around dawn, I must have dozed. I woke to the sound of the shower running. I hadn't turned it on. The bathroom door was open. Steam rolled out like breath. The mirror was fog thick. Water roared into the tub and down the drain, a constant hungry noise. I stumbled toward it, half asleep, throat screaming for water. Then I stopped in the doorway and saw the shower curtain. It bulged inward like something heavy was pressing against it from inside. A shape, human-sized, too still. My heart hammered. My teeth hummed. The curtain moved slightly, like a chest expanding. A wet inhale. My brother's voice, muffled behind plastic. Come in, it said. It's warm. I backed away, shaking. The shower curtain bulged again, and a long, thin hand pressed against it from inside. Fingers too many jointed, the outline of them visible through the plastic like bones. I ran to the breaker panel in my hallway and flipped everything off with shaking hands. The lights died. The fridge hum stopped. The apartment went quiet except for the shower, which kept running. Of course it did, because it wasn't electricity. It was water. I stood in my dark apartment listening to the roar of water behind the bathroom door and realized I was outmatched in the dumbest way possible. You can fight a man. You can fight a dog. You can fight a fire if you're stupid enough. You can't fight plumbing. I left. I grabbed my keys and ran out barefoot, down the stairs, out into the damp morning air, and I didn't stop until I hit the beach. I don't know why I went there. Maybe because the craving had become a compass. Maybe because part of me wanted to end it. Maybe because the ocean had been calling my name through pipes and drains and mirrors, and I was tired. The beach was empty. Gray sky, low waves rolling in, froth like spit. The wind cut through my shirt. I stood at the waterline with my toes in cold, wet sand. The sea smelled clean, and that made it worse. A wave slid up and touched my feet, cold and gentle. The craving surged, so hard my knees almost buckled. I leaned forward, not even thinking, hands reaching for the water. 3 beats knocked through my teeth. Thump, thump, thump. A ping, crisp as sonar, rang through my bones. I froze, because in that moment, with my fingers inches from the ocean, I realized something sharp and awful. It didn't need me to drown. It needed me to agree. It needed me to choose it, to open the door on purpose. My mouth filled with salt. My throat ached. My eyes burned. I stepped back from the water. The waves slid away, leaving my toes cold and clean. For a second, nothing happened. Then the surface of the ocean out there, 10 yards out, maybe, went unnaturally smooth like glass. A dark shape rose beneath it, huge and slow, like the continent shadow from the beach photo in the room. The water bulged as if something was just under the skin. A pale line appeared, vertical like a seam. It opened, not above water. In the water, a split in the surface like a mouth opening sideways. A sound came out, not a roar, not a scream, a structured series of tones that hit my body like pressure. My vision blurred, my teeth sang, my stomach clenched, and then from that open seam in the ocean, my own voice came, perfect, intimate, close. Hey, it said, friendly, normal, like a neighbor calling over a fence. I took another step back. No, ikuruaka. The voice repeated, slightly different, like it was adjusting. Hey, man. My skin crawled. It wasn't threatening. That was the horror. It was practicing casual. It was learning how to sound like it belonged in my life. A wave broke, the seam vanished, and the water went back to normal chop like nothing had happened. The dark shape sank. The beach was empty again. I stood there shaking, salt drying on my lips, and I realized the shift chief had been right. It wasn't a monster at first. It was thirst. It was familiarity. It was a voice you trusted. I went home and turned off my water at the main shutoff. I bought bottled water and kept it sealed. I stopped going near the harbor. I stopped walking on the beach. I took sponge baths with barely damp cloths like I was afraid of becoming wet. It didn't matter. The knock still came. Not always in pipes now because I cut those off. Sometimes it came through my floorboards when it rained. Sometimes it came through my teeth when I walked past a fountain downtown. Sometimes it came through the metal frame of my bed when fog rolled in thick off the sea. Sometimes I'd be driving because I had to get groceries to not starve, and I'd hear my brother say my name from the passenger seat, clear as day. I never looked. Sometimes my phone would light up with a call from a block number, even though I'd thrown it away and bought a new one. The voicemails were always empty except for breathing. Slow, vet, patient, and every few days it would add a new word in my voice like a kid learning language. E. Hey, open, drink. Once I heard it laugh. Not a human laugh. A perfect imitation that missed something essential like warmth or lungs, and it made my skin crawl for hours. The worst part? It wasn't calling me back to the water anymore. It didn't need to. It was learning to bring the water to me. I don't go near pools now. I don't stand on bridges. I don't take showers with the lights off. I don't look too long at my reflection in a glass of water. Because I know the trick. If you answer, it learns. And lately, when the knock comes, 3 patient beats through my teeth, and the pipes in my building whisper like they're full of breath, I sometimes hear my own voice in the darkness, rehearsing my name, soft and intimate, like someone practicing how to sound like they've always been here.